I am 78 years old. Whenever people hear that I was in the war, they call me a hero. They say it with certainty, as if that word explains everything. But if I am honest with you, most of what you believe about war is wrong. You are taught that survival is victory, that sacrifice is noble, that simply coming back alive means you have won. We were taught the same thing. I believed it too when I was young enough to think the world was simple. Now I stand here in front of names that never came back, and I need you to hear this before you decide what victory really means. I survived the war. I came home. I was breathing. I could still walk. I was applauded, and somehow that was considered a happy ending. But no one tells you the real price of survival. No one tells you that you can come home and still leave the most important parts of yourself behind. No one tells you that you can win a war and lose yourself before life even begins. They show you medals, parades, stories of bravery. They do not show you the silence afterward, the faces that return when everything is quiet, the weight of the word hero when it becomes heavier than the word wounded. I was praised for what I did, congratulated for what I endured, and very slowly, so slowly that I did not notice at first, I began to understand that what I lost was never part of the story people celebrate. There are things war takes that never appear in any statistics, things you only realize are gone years later when you try to remember who you were before all of this. Before I tell you what that cost was, ask yourself this: if you survive but have to trade away yourself, can it still be called victory? When I was very young, the decision to go to war was not as difficult as people imagine. Back then, everything was clear to the point of simplicity. There was right and wrong, us and them. I was taught that sacrifice was noble, that loss was a necessary price, that coming back alive meant winning. No one called it doubt, they called it belief. And I believe with all the innocence of someone who had never seen the ending of great choices. My comrades were like family. We ate together, slept together, laughed together. We believed we were doing the right thing, that history would stand with us. Each time we went into battle, fear was covered by the feeling of belonging to something larger than ourselves. I did not question it. I did not need to. The world was sharply divided, then black and white life and death, right and wrong. And in a world like that, sacrifice sounded beautiful, necessary, worth the exchange. I believed that if I endured long enough, if I played my role correctly, everything would be fine. I believed war took my youth in exchange for meaning. I believed I was protecting something important, and not once did I stop to ask what it would take from me in return. Only later, when the days grew longer and quieter, did I realize that a small sense of being off had been there from the beginning. Then the cost began to reveal itself, not in one great moment, but little by little. First names stopped appearing on the list. Familiar faces disappeared without a chance to say goodbye. People said it was war, that it was unavoidable. I nodded and learned how to keep going. Then I came home. The world outside looked the same, but I was not. People said, "At least you're alive." They said you're a hero with relief, as if those words closed the story, but nothing closed inside me. What I carried home did not fit in a suitcase. I did not know how to talk to my family, how to explain why I felt distant, even sitting at the same table. I was no longer the person I had been, but I did not know who I had become. At night, I woke to things no one could see. During the day, I smiled because that was what was expected. People kept calling me a hero while I searched for the feeling of belonging somewhere again. The distance grew, not only between me and others, but between me and myself. I survived, but I did not know what I was surviving for. No one prepared me for that. No one taught me that after the war, the hardest battle is learning how to exist in silence. I did not lose everything in one battle. I lost myself slowly, year by year, long after the war had ended. For a very long time, I thought my problem was simply that I had not yet adjusted to life after the war. I told myself that everyone goes through this, that this emptiness would eventually pass, that with enough time, everything would be fine. But the years went by, and the only thing that did not change was the feeling that I was living inside an unfinished story. People called me a hero, and when I first heard that word, I did feel proud, but that feeling was brief. It came and went faster than a single deep breath. What remained afterward was silence. I stood in the middle of applause and felt hollow. Meanwhile, what I had lost never left me. The faces I cannot forget, the names no one speaks anymore, the parts of me that stayed where the war ended with no train to bring them back. I began to realize that war, in a historical sense, can be called necessary, timely part of how the world works. But the story people tell about it is always incomplete. They talk about victory, about borders redrawn, about the day it ended. They do not talk about the mornings when you wake up not knowing who you are without the sound of gunfire. They do not talk about carrying a body that survived while the person inside has changed. No one ever told me that war does not only kill people, it also reshapes those who survive. I did not die on the battlefield, but I did not return whole either. There are times when I ask myself who I might have become if there had been no war. That question has no answer, and that is the longest pain of all. I do not know who I am outside of those memories. I cannot return to the person I was before because that person stopped existing at a very distant moment. We were taught how to fight, how to endure, how to sacrifice. But no one taught us how to live afterward, how to build meaning again from fragments. And very late in life, I understood that survival was never the same as victory. True victory is not coming back, still breathing, not being called by beautiful words. Victory is keeping yourself intact through the journey, not losing the ability to feel, to love, to connect. I won a war by the definition people use, but I lost the most important parts of myself. Standing here in front of these silent graves, I see that more clearly than ever. The people beneath them no longer struggle with the question of who they became. I do, and that is the cost that never appears in any victory speech. Now I am 78 years old. Time is no longer on my side, and for the first time, I do not pretend that there are endless days ahead. I have lived long enough to watch titles fade, hero, victory, glory. They sound enormous when you are young, but standing here alone, what remains are the questions I avoided for years. I am not here to tell anyone what to think. I am only asking, and perhaps you should ask with me, if a victory takes more than it gives, can it still be called a victory? If to achieve what is praised as right, you must trade away the most important parts of yourself, would you accept that price? I once believed sacrifice was always noble, that if the goal was big enough, every loss was justified. But now looking back, I wish someone had asked me a simpler question back then. Is this a price you are willing to pay for the rest of your life? I am a survivor, and because of that, I understand that survival is not the final answer. What matters more is what you still carry with you after all those choices. If this story makes you think of someone who believes sacrifice is always right, share it with them, not to change them, but to give them one more question before they decide. And if you want, leave a line here. What do you think true victory really is? It took me almost a lifetime to begin asking that question, and I hope you do not need as long as I did.